All right. All right. So what is JavaScript? So I think we all are familiar with it a little bit. Is the language that allows us to program the browser, right? The browser is not just a canvas that renders static HTML. The browser reads an HTML document, it parses the HTML, and it creates a data model of it, right? Instantiates in its RAM, right? As much memory as we give it. It'll create objects that represent each one of the elements on the page. Okay. Well, JavaScript allows us to interact and manipulate that model, right? Those objects. It allows us to remove things from the from that data model, add things to the data model, manipulate it, add things, or update it in any which way we want. Yes? And the way we do that is by using the special tag or element, the script element on the page. Right? So let's create just a very simple one. Let's go in assets. We'll go into lectures, browser, JavaScript, and let's create here just a sample HTML document. We'll call it hello.html. Okay? All right, so first let's make sure that we can navigate here. Hello from HTML. Let's make sure we can navigate there. Let's see, where did I have? This would be assets. This would be modules. Why did I give it such a long name for programming? Oh no, browser programming. Browser programming. And then I guess I'm too much into databases I'm normalizing my directory structure. Hello.html. What should not work? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So we're there, right? We're in that particular document. So we can embed. Obviously, we can embed tons of HTML static content here, but we can also put in here. Let me close that. I don't need that. Is that okay? Let me close that. Okay, I can go back and forth. Excellent. I'll copy that, and if I go into my HTML and I paste it in there, right? This says that this script tag says that the following is not HTML. This is a completely different language, right? No tags, no attributes, no styling. It's code that's supposed to be interpreted and executed. If I refresh that page, notice that it alerts, right? It executes and does something, all right? So let's play around with what can you do with this script here. Up to this point, we haven't manipulated anything in the DOM, in the document object model. Let's see, we did that, or we can notice that right now when we think about JavaScript, everybody thinks programming the browser, and it's obvious, right? Because historically that has been true. Right, JavaScript started, had its first foray success in browsers, right? So yeah, it's been there for quite a while. But as it's finding itself to be a very powerful language also on the server side, right? And as we'll be exploring next week when we start looking at Node.js. So alert obviously only works on a browser, right? Because it's something that is regenerating something for human consumption, popping up some content. This does not work, for instance, in Node.js. There is no alert boxes. There's nothing to display, right? But this one instead does work in both the console. If we reload our page, it doesn't actually show anything, but you can inspect the inspector. Right, this right-hand side is going to become your next best friend. That allows you to look at the DOM. Right, the first half over here, it shows you the DOM, right? What the browser interprets right, of the objects that it's currently rendering, right? It sees an HTML object, it sees a head, a body. Inside of there's an H1, and then there's a script. The script has no rendering, right? It does not render. It's interpreted and it's executed. The next, notice that there's several tabs up here. One of the tabs is the console, and that's exactly where we wrote our hello world. See that, right? You can use this to do a very simple debugging, right? But I would not expect for you to use to do some serious debugging. Serious debugging will happen in the source, right? If you click on source, you can look at the HTML and actually put breakpoints, right? So that if you refresh, it stops. See that the browser is currently paused and it's looking at that it's about to execute that line of code. Notice that the console, it has nothing. But if we continue, right, notice that it writes the hello world. Yes? I do not want to see any console log in your source code. All right? If you want to play around with it locally, but before pushing anything into your repo, you should remove all your console logs. All right? All right. It's a poor man's debugging tool, right? You should be debugging using these debuggers over here, stepping through the code. All right. All right. So next, let's see. Another way that we can generate content is we can let's add this document.write. Document is the object that represents this, right? So this, what we're looking at here in the elements, the document represents this whole document here, this HTML document, the doc type. This whole thing is represented by this one object, the document object, right? Instantiated. And from the document, you can navigate to everything else, right? Or you can also add to the document, right? Adding new content. For instance, here, we're dynamically adding this piece of text, right? Where? Well, right after this H1. Right after this H1, we're going to add the hello world, right? So let's do that. If we reload our page, right, notice that it says hello world. There it is, right? So we might want to call this hello from JavaScript, maybe. JavaScript. Right, so if we refresh, there it is. Hello from JavaScript, and it stopped our console. Everything okay? Right? And if we go to our element, to our DOM, notice that right, we have the script, right? And there is our hello from JavaScript. See that? It actually added it to the DOM, right? To the document object model, even though it's not in our original HTML. See that? Right? And this could also be some styled, right? H2. Right, so if we re-render, notice that it's indeed added there. See, hello from JavaScript 2 with H2, right? Even though that's not in the original document. Right? So we could certainly build on top of this one very powerful, very simple idea here. We can build an entire framework around that. Right? Imagine that we had our own document object, right? Our own JSON object that we read from some database, some content management system that returns some JSON object with data. Yes, with arrays and strings and dates and whatnot. We could iterate over that, right? And then programmatically use document.write to generate dynamically a piece of content. Yes, and the user would not see the difference. They would consider it as being just any other HTML document. As far as they're concerned, they look at the DOM and all that content is there. Everything is there. If they look at the source, they won't find the H2. You see that? The H2 is not there. So it was never downloaded from the server, right? But it did make it into the document object model, right? Some websites out there, and you look at their page source. There's 3 lines of code. That's it, and it's a fairly complex page. It says, "Where's all the content?" Right? So certainly in the source file is not there, right? They have frameworks that dynamically go to the database, right? Access the resources, right? And then they build it, right, programmatically, all right? So you can't steal any of their source code. Awesome. So let's keep going. You can also not only add things to the document, but if the content has identifiers like hello here, we can refer to it by programmatically. We can grab it. Okay, we can grab the element by ID, document dot get element by ID, and once we grab it, we can do some manipulation, right? For instance, we can grab this hello from HTML. We can say grab that hello item and change its inner HTML, right? So instead of saying hello from HTML, we can say, hello from inner HTML. Okay. So if we re-render that, notice that the content says that it's hello from inner HTML, even though the content was downloaded as hello from HTML, right? Because we dynamically modified it, right? So this is only to point out the fact that we can read from the content, we can manipulate the content dynamically, we can add to the content dynamically. All right, just pointing that out. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so here what we did is we retrieved it. Right, so there it is. We retrieved it. We can assign it to a variable. So this is hello, right? And then we can use it as for additional manipulation. That variable, that local variable, hello dot inner HTML. So this would do the same thing. So let's change this to be 3 to 1. If we re-render, there it is 3 to 1. Everybody okay? So we've been manipulating the DOM. Yes.
So when that script runs, it kind of just goes back to the top of the HTML.
Yeah, so it can only refer to things that have been already defined, right? To anything that's above it. If anything's declared after it, it can't access it because they have not yet been added to the DOM, right? And that is why you caught something very important. That's why I'm putting my script down at the end. See that? Right? Since I am referring to things that have been already defined. If I move this down, I move it after the script, right? If I move it after the script, it doesn't work, and actually I get an error. See that error? If you look at the console, it says line 3 in hello.html. If you click on it, it says that there's a null. There's a null pointer exception. If I click on it, and I put a breakpoint, like you should, right? When you see an error, you should step through your code. It says that there's something wrong. That hello is null. So if I step through it and I hover over my hello, it says that it's null. I could not find an element with that ID because it's defined afterwards. It has not been added to the DOM just yet. Right? The browser has not parsed it yet, has not added it to the DOM. Okay? So yeah, let me put that back. All right. Another reason to put the script at the bottom, so typically scripts would be found here in the head, commonly, right? That is the appropriate place to put a script, right? In the head tag, okay? And for most part, you'll find that. Now, if these scripts are way too big, right? What will happen is that the browser will start downloading these JavaScripts, right? And it has to interpret them. It needs to perhaps execute them, right? And it won't get to rendering the rest of the page until it's done interpreting that JavaScript. Right? And some of these libraries are fairly big, right? So what folks do, very common, is that they won't put it in the head tag. They'll put it at the bottom of the body, at the very, very bottom of the body, right? So that they load last, right? And so they can quickly just pump some content out to the user, right? So that they can see something right away, and then gradually modify and update the content if they need dynamically. Yes, so that users don't wait there for a couple milliseconds and then they navigate away because it's taking too long to load. Right, so they put it at the bottom of the body, even though it's not the syntactically correct. Right, but the browser is fine with it. Everybody okay? All right, let's keep going. Next. All right, so once we grab the element, we can manipulate certain aspects of it. So for instance, this hello, I can not only modify its actual content, I can modify its style. Right, it has an attribute style, and it has all sorts of styles. The background color, the foreground color, the font, whether it behaves as a block or an inline. It has tons and tons of style you can manipulate. Here we're going to change its foreground color. We're going to change it to red, right? And that changes to red. Right? So we have dynamically set the content and change its foreground color. We can change its font size as well. Hello. So that we can make it maybe a little smaller. Okay, now it's 25 pixels. All right. Let's keep going. You can hide it. Just so that it doesn't. I'm not. Go away. What? I'm dictating now?
Yes.
Oh, great. All right, can you stop? What did I do? How did I turn that on? Okay, I think I turned it off. Okay. All right. So yeah. So for instance, I can say after having all those manipulation, I say display none. Right. So if I render it, oops, not none, not like this. It's actually the string none. There it is. So the red portion is gone. Yes.
So this seems like it's very much in the style of putting the inline styling.
Yes.
Is it all right to do it when it's in JavaScript?
No. Yeah, the proper thing to do is not to have any actual JavaScript embedded in the HTML. Instead, it will put it as a separate file. Right, let's do that right away. Excellent. We'll put right next to our HTML, right, we'll put a separate JavaScript file. So let's do a JavaScript. We'll call this hello.js, okay, which doesn't have anything. And for now, we're going to just copy the entire content. We're going to remove it from here and put it where it should have been all along. There it is. Okay. And here, instead, we're going to refer to that file, hello.js. Everybody okay? All right. All right. So if we refresh this, hopefully it will do the same thing. All right. It behaves exactly the same way. All right. But the proper thing is to put it outside of JavaScript. Okay. Of the HTML. All right. So let's keep going. I'm not going to bring it back for now. I'll bring it back a little later. Let me just show you a couple more things. First, we can certainly work with dates. So let's do that. We can instantiate dates, right? And then just write it to the document. So we can say document dot write the date. So today. There it is. And this is the default representation, the string representation of dates, but we can certainly just render the we can render just the month. So we can say today dot get month, and something. Did I misspell something? Oh. And there it is. That 8 over there is the month 8. It's 0 based, right? So it is September, right? But it's 0 based. And so we can add some content here to add some spacing here. So this will be a break line. There's the 8, or we can add here some h2 saying the month. Okay, the month, there it is. And maybe add here that we are talking about the date. The date. Okay. Now, generating content from another language, for instance, having JavaScript generate HTML is very error-prone. Right? You don't want to do these things. Right? Ideally, we would have a higher level of abstraction that would allow us to deal with a document, with an object representation, right? An object-oriented representation. This is very, very low level, right? And this is not where you want to be coding, right? But nevertheless, let's just keep playing around with some of the things that you can do with JavaScript. You can certainly work with arrays. So let's declare maybe a couple arrays here, and we'll work. This will be arrays, and we can just display all the scores. Maybe have this h3, and this renders as an array. There it is. It renders it as a comma-separated string. We can certainly write code that manipulates the array to calculate the total and then the average. Right. So let's see. We can iterate over. Oops. Did I copy? Copy. So this is iterating, calculating the total, adding everything up, and then calculating the average, and then we can display the total and the average. So this is the total and average. So this is we can say total is equal to the total. Do I have a total? Yes, I do. And add a break line, and then show the average, and display the average here. There it is. Okay, everybody good? All right. Is that right? 324? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's looking at a couple more. Dynamic lists. You can render dynamic content, right? So, for instance, let's see. We could say let's copy that, and we can put some headings here just to make sure we keep track of all these examples. So this is dynamic lists. So here I'm dynamically adding a UL. Yes.
Can you draw the CSS class through JavaScript? Let's say after an event we want to make it look a little different.
Yep.
Instead of setting those properties over here in JavaScript, can we just double a class of CSS?
The styling would apply to existing HTML and any new HTML that you add to the DOM, right? So whenever the DOM changes, right, the rendering engine will run the rules in the CSS to see if any new rule, any of those rules apply to any new DOM that you've added to the document.
What if we are doing get element by ID and then playing around it? Let's say it was a password field.
Okay.
And I didn't find the corresponding user ID. I mean, it's a wrong password. Let's say. Can JavaScript toggle a CSS class which will make it look different?
Oh, certainly. Yes, you can do everything. Everything you can manipulate everything from in the document. You know, the styling, the class, add new classes, remove classes, add new content to it, and then hide it again, and you can do everything. Yep. Yeah, everything that the browser can do on its own, you can do better. Okay. All right. So let's see the scores. Oh, apparently this needed the array here. So let me move the array here. And so this is dynamically adding a UL, iterating over the scores, and adding a brand new LI to show it in a ordered list. Oh, so there it is. So scores sub 0 all the way to 67 and whatnot. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. You can also generate dynamic tables. So there it is. Not that you would do this, but nevertheless you can. So let's see, dynamic lists. So let's paste that in there. Let's copy that. And this would be dynamic tables. And apparently I need those scores. Let's move that up further. I'm doing it in chronological, reverse chronological order so that I have it always at the top of the page so I don't have to scroll down every time. Okay. So there's my scores. So what this does is that it starts a variable with a table string, and then it does the same. As it iterates, it creates a brand new row string, appending to the column a D, right? Okay, this I should put this in separate lines so that it's easy to read. There we go. Let me put this in separate lines so that it's self-explanatory. Right, so it's creating a row, then a column, appending scores and whatnot. Again, this is very, very error-prone. Right? It's very easy to make a mistake, right? And so we don't actually want to do something like this. Ideally, again, we would have a higher level of abstraction, right, that allows us to think about this in a very abstract sense, okay, where we have some kind of object model that gets magically mapped to some template, right? When you're going to generate dynamic content, ideally you would be doing it on the HTML side, not on the JavaScript side, right? But I just want to show you how it used to be, right, that you would dynamically generate all this content using strings, and then you would just add it to the DOM dynamically. Today we have separated these roles and says no. We're going to have certainly we need some logic, right, of when to do things and why to do them, and to provide the actual data, right, the scores. This should be the only thing that needed here, right? And then somehow we throw it over the wire over to HTML, and HTML does the iteration. Okay, and that's where we're going in a minute. Right, so here's the tables, dynamic tables. There they are. Apparently, those are tables. This is we can make a border 1. See, is that? There we go. So okay, they are tables. Believe me. All right. So what else? Let's see. Binding events. We can listen to incoming events as folks click around. So let's see. We can create a button. Let's create a button here. Events. Click events. So on the HTML, we can add a button. No, I need HTML. I need the button. There it is, our button. And the button, we can bind it to any number of events. Click, double click, enter, exit, all sorts of mouse events and keyboard events, and then we can call functions that are declared in JavaScript, right? So say hello here. We're going to we're going to declare the function on the JavaScript side. All right, so on the JavaScript side, we're going to declare a function. It doesn't really matter where. We'll define it maybe here. There it is. And I guess we don't need a write. And when we click on that button, right, it goes and that says that hello, right? Or we could, for instance, if you remember, we had hidden something here, didn't we? We had made something none. There it is. Hello dot style dot display equal none. So what we could do is maybe bring this HTML down here, right? Declare it way down here, and we're going to say grab that same hello and bring it back, and we'll say display it as block. Okay, it used to be there, but it's no longer there. It was hidden here. But if you click on say hello, it'll bring it back, hopefully. Let's see. If we click on say hello, it brings back that initial H1 that we had hidden, right? And so we can certainly have two buttons. One hides it, one shows it, or we can have a single button and it remembers the state, right? And it can toggle between showing and hiding, right? And you can apply it to any number, any content, right? And you can create and you can extrapolate that into having some complex hierarchical data structure, right? That hides and shows whole chunks of trees and branches and leaves, right? You can extrapolate that. Yes.
Shouldn't that be rendered below the list?
I believe this is the very first HTML thing right here. It's way at the very top, tippy top. Yeah. Everything else is rendered below it. Yep. Let's see. Let's continue binding events. Right. So typically you put the JavaScript in the head or at the end of the body, but ideally you would declare it outside in its own JavaScript file. Inner HTML. I think we talked about inner HTML. So for instance, here's some simple math. Let's add it right here. Some simple math. And notice it has an ID of result, which right now just says simple math 2 plus 3. And let's add maybe a break here. There it is, 2 plus 3. And we can add, we can add some document write that grabs the results dynamically from JavaScript. Let's bring it up here. It grabs the results and then changes the inner HTML to 2 plus 3, the actual value. So, not that one. Right, and then updates it to 5. Okay, so certainly you can, or you can render this by using buttons and whatnot, right? Add nodes, blah 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 blah. Yeah, but I don't want it now. Okay. Grabbing the input field. If you have an input field, you can certainly grab content from there. Right. So this is H2 input fields. There it is, which now is rendering some default value. There it is, 1, 2, 3. So the value attribute says what it's currently showing, and I'm giving it a value of A. And from the JavaScript, we can grab that. We can grab the element, right? We can grab the element by ID and retrieve its current value, which is 1, 2, 3 right now, right? So we can alert it, or we can write it out to the console log. Right. So if we bring the console, right now as that, if we re-render, notice that it shows 1, 2, 3, grabbing the value from that input field over there, right? Using the dot value. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's keep going. Here's a very simple calculator, defining just a couple of values here. Let's a couple of input fields. So let's add the input fields B and C. All right. And do we have a button? And a button that if we click on it, that button, it's going to calculate A plus B. All right. So right now it doesn't do anything. If I click on it, there is no function called A plus B. So it's complaining. I'm trying to call this function, but it's not declared. So let's do that. Let's go to the JavaScript side and declare that function. There it is. Let's copy it. And if we bring it over to its JavaScript side, let's declare up here. Copy, paste. There it is. It says I'm going to call A plus B, which is going to retrieve the value of A, the value of B, and is going to change the value of C to be the inner HTML A plus B. Notice that we parsed them as integer. By default, if we don't parse them, right, it's going to interpret it as strings. So if this is 2 plus 3, A plus B is 23. Right? It interprets it as, by default, as strings. So we need to explicitly tell them that no. These are not strings. They are integers. Parse them as integers, and now the plus sign, it's overloaded. It knows that if these are strings, it's going to concatenate them. But if these are integers or numbers, they're going to be added as addition. All right, arithmetic addition. All right, so let's see. JavaScript objects, we have there's a specific notation that is used to represent data in. Why is the copy not working? That allows us to represent arbitrarily complex data structures, right? And they are declared using the curly brackets with several attributes in there. Here we have 3 attributes for house, rooms, baths, and square feet, right? This is referred to as an object literal, right? And so we can reuse it to represent any piece of data, and you have several data types: strings, dates, numbers, nested objects, arrays of objects, right? And they can be arbitrarily complex, right? So here, let's render a house using the data that we have so far. Let's put it here, and here's H2 for the house. And if we render right now, nothing happens, right? It's empty. But we can programmatically take that object and use it to populate the HTML. Grab the initial HTML of the rooms, the baths, and the square feet in the HTML. Grab these 3 elements, right, and populate them with whatever's in the object. Make sense? Right? And so if we refresh, there we go, 3, 3, and 1300. Everybody okay? And obviously, you can extrapolate this and make it as complex and useful as having some data model, some templates, right? And then just iterating over it and rendering an entire page. Right now, it's just three bullet points. Yes, but some folks have taken all these ideas we've gone over today, right, and they've created frameworks around these, right, so that we don't have to deal with all this low-level manipulation of the DOM, right? They've created, several layers of abstraction on top of these ideas, and that's where we want to go today. Oops. Let's go on. So JavaScript on its allows you to do some default behavior that might lead to bad code, right? For instance, one of the most egregious ones is that if you're comparing 2 values, whether they are equal, if you use the normal equal, it will try to cast one of them into the other to then do the comparison. So if you have a number 1 and a character 1, right, as far as Java is concerned, those are equal, right? And those could lead to some errors that are very hard to debug, right? So to help eliminate these bad practices and allow us to easier debug this at compile time, right? As opposed to when we deploy this, right? Use strict, just that one string, right? Anywhere in the JavaScript, typically you can just paste it in there, and that's it. Turns on, right, strong validation, right? So that if you have something that is considered bad practice, right, it will not even compile, right? It won't even run. Let's see if our code has something malicious. Okay, I refresh. It's not complaining, so everything is good. Something that would trigger this would be if I declare a global variable, which is equal to 1, 2, 3. Right? Notice that even the IDE is complaining, saying no, you should not do this. Right? Okay. Notice that if I comment out use strict, it doesn't complain. This is perfectly fine JavaScript. Right? This is declared at the global space, and it's a bad practice. If I turn on use strict, it complains. And if I load it, right, notice that my whole JavaScript is broken. Okay? So this allows me to catch these kinds of mistakes early on, right? Instead of going forward and deploying this, right? And it flags this as an error. Make sense? All right. So I would either declare it as a variable, or as a constant, or as a whatever, or let, right? If you're using the newer version of JavaScript, right? It would you would use those newer constructs. Everybody okay? All right. So let's see. Let's reload. All right. Let's that concludes the intro to JavaScript. There's plenty more. I'm going to leave this to-do example to a little later. Right, we'll come back to that. Right now, I'd like to jump into jQuery. Right, let's do that next.